there is a trade out there that helps us, great. We do it.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball. Today's show also brought to you by hotels.com and by Grip 6 Belts. We're going to be looking at the Houston Rockets and their 2018-19 season in review. Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it indeed. The Rockets, a bit of a disappointing season this year, no doubt. 53-29, fourth seed in the Western Conference. Beat the Jazz 4-1 in the first round of the playoffs and then lost to the Warriors in 6 in round 2. A big step back from where they were last season. Lots of curious decisions in the offseason, penny pinching moves, tax avoidant trades and free agency decisions, coach firings or retirings, and now more firings in the offseason. Just a lot of curious stuff under the new ownership group here in Houston, and it remains to be seen exactly what this does mean for this squad, what sort of heavy-duty moves they're going to be looking at in the offseason. That quote at the beginning of the show was from Daryl Morey. Lots of reports that everyone apart from James Harden is available to be traded from this squad. Mike D'Antoni not getting an extension, assistant coaches being let go and fired, and plenty of upheaval for a team that was as close as anybody has really been prior to this finals with the Raptors, which is still ongoing, of course, to defeating the Golden State Warriors. So really, really confusing stuff, and a lot of it just, again, coming down to ownership and money. They finished with, and this is really, and people always talk about, D'Antoni ball and all that sort of stuff, 26th in the NBA in pace, the Rockets. Now this is a guy that when he was in Phoenix was the number one pace team by that far. It wasn't funny. 26th. That's a crazy low number. Second in offense, 17th in defense. That's about right for a D'Antoni team. But that pace thing is really relatively surprising to me. Also, only 7th in the NBA in free throw attempt rate. 6th in free throw attempt rate. 1st in three-point attempt rate. No one will be surprised by that. But I think people will be surprised that their free throw attempt rate was actually 6th in the NBA for all the bitching and complaining that goes on about James Harden. They were just 6th in that category. Defensively, they still have some struggles, but they're not as bad as what can be made out at times. 8th overall in blocks. 7th in terms of allowing assists. Had the second lowest three-point percentage against, which can be a little bit defense independent, so maybe that's somewhat cause for concern moving forward. But it wasn't the best season, but still, plenty of positives to take out of it for this Houston Rockets squad. If we have a look at their draft coming up, they don't have any draft picks in this draft. The first round pick was traded over to the Cleveland Cavaliers in that Marquise Chris trade. Second round pick is gone as well. Free agency wise, they don't really have don't have any ability to get cap space outside of trades. Unrestricted free agents, Iman Shumpert, Gerald Green, Austin Rivers, two guys who are parts of their rotation. They've got Ken Fareed as well, another rotation piece who Rivers and Fareed both buyout guys that they brought in. There's Daniel House, a restricted free agent who they played the two-way game with during the season. Chris Chiozza, Mike Fraser, Isaiah Hartenstein are all non-guarantees. I think Hartenstein will be back. I don't think the other two guys will be. While Nene has a $3.8 million player option, and at times he looks like he struggles. He's not an every night player, not an every night backup. We're well aware of that at this point in Nene's career. But losing Shumpert, Green probably won't hurt that much. Rivers could. Fareed was a key portion for this team. House as well. So there is obviously some really interesting things that this team needs to decide on. They're not going to have huge amounts of space to make that happen, unfortunately, given the way that their tax situation is with both Paul and Harden making in excess of $38 million for this upcoming season. Just don't forget to subscribe to this podcast by using the Himalaya Podcast app. Himalaya Podcast app is a great app for you to go and listen to your favorite podcast. Every podcast that you're looking for will be there. They have personally curated playlists made by their expert podcast tastemakers. You can like and comment on your favorite individual episodes. Download the Himalaya Podcast app on the App Store or Google Play Store, and don't forget to follow Locked On Fantasy Basketball once you're there. All right, let's get into these players now. Jim Harden, the number one ranked player in fantasy overall, a whopping 37 minutes a game, 36 points, almost 5 threes, 6.5 boards, 7.5 assists with over 2 steals, 44 and 88 including 37% from three. He was unbelievable. He did drop to number 2 last season after being the number 1 guy pretty much all of the year until Davis took over at the end of the year. This season, number 1 pretty much from the get-go. There were plenty of people that let Harden fall to 4 and 5 in drafts. Oh, he got the MVP now, he's going to get lazy. That's always a bullshit narrative. He took it up by significant notches. Now, his assist numbers did drop. The last 3 seasons, he's gone from 11.2 to 8.8 down to 7.4, but he rebounded the ball better this year. He scored an additional 5 points per game, went to over 2 steals per game. He's a significant contributor in the blocks category as well. He hurts your field goal percentage, no doubt. Not because he's a dreadful shooter, but because he takes so many shots. So 44% is not a terrible number, but on 24.5 attempts, it's pretty hard to you find the right balance there. But free throws, he can almost win you that on his own. But amazingly, free throws are only his 3rd best fantasy category behind points and threes, and only just ahead of steals. So it shows he just has that ability right across the board. We know how good he is. Still not 30 years of age. You'd expect another 1 year like this from Harden. I think maybe a step back in that scoring, but definitely in that top 3 discussion, top 2 discussion. After that, we'll see how it goes. But just monster numbers from him. 14 wins added this season, plus 5.65 PIPM. A pretty significant negative on the defensive end, plus 5.3 on-off as well from Harden. So really, really good numbers from him once again, and you were well rewarded by picking him in those early portions of the draft. Chris Paul, the next highest ranked fantasy player on the Rockets, the 19th ranked guy overall. 32 minutes for 15.5 points, 2 threes, 4.5 boards with 8 assists and 2 steals. The shooting, the real issue here with Paul, 42% from the field and 86% from the line. He had his injuries, of course, as he always does. 34 years of age, I don't expect that to go away at any point soon. But that's a big drop-off in scoring, almost 3 points per game less, 4 percentage points lower in his true shooting, his overall field goal percentage, and that's what took him from being the guy who was 13th ranked last season down to 18th. That's probably not even as big of a fall as you might have expected from Paul. But still, is he a risky second-round pick? Yeah. Will he be solid enough and could be a real steal in the 3rd or 4th round, which is likely where he goes next season? I think that's possible. The per-game numbers are still right where they need to be. It's just that those injuries and maybe 1 more year of decline might actually impact that shooting. But he dealt with an elbow injury during the season, which you'd have to think had some sort of impact on those shooting numbers. And I think a bounce back is a legitimate expectation for Chris Paul. Plus 3.63 PIPM, second on the team to James Harden overall, plus 4.2 on off, a really strong number again. So I think some of the reports of his demise may have been a little bit exaggerated. There were some clear drop-offs in Chris Paul's game this season. Let's talk Clint Capella now, the 27th ranked player overall. He had a Yahoo ADP at the beginning of the season of 37, so beat that number. 16.5 points with 12.5 boards and played 34 minutes a game. 1.5 blocks with 65 and 64 as his 2 percentages. So there are a couple of things here. The block numbers decreased, which is frustrating. But what we saw is going from 27 minutes a night up to 33, 34 minutes a night. Now, at the beginning of the season, he was struggling. He just signed a contract. He's gotten fat and lazy. He can't run out the games. And that was true. But he also did play an additional 6 minutes per game this season, so I think that's offset. He improved his free throws from 56 to 61. The field goal percentage stayed high. This is just who Clint Capella is at this point, and I think we can expect him to hover in this 3rd round range, 2nd round range for multiple years to come. He's still only 25. If those blocks go from 1.5 up closer to 2 next season, then he isn't the 27th ranked player. He's the 19th or the 20th ranked player, and that's still good value. I reckon there's still, he has issues, no threes, low assists, low steals, they're all problems, and he's more suited for a head-to-head league. But I think if you're getting him in a 3rd round, late 3rd round of a head-to-head league, you'll be pretty happy with the results that Clint Capella will provide for you. Again, a strong PIPM defensively and offensively, provided a lot of wins to this team. Only a 1.2 on-off is a little bit concerning, but there's no one on this team that's coming to take his role. Could he be traded at any point? There seems to be some whispers that maybe he's not going to be around forever on this Rockets team. They could be looking to ship him out. I'm not so sure that's the right move. I really like what Capella can do, but he seems pretty locked in as this 3rd round type of player for a few years to come at the very least. Next up is PJ Tucker. Actually, the Rockets had 3 top 30 players and then no other top 100 players, which is pretty emblematic of their entire roster. Tucker was the next highest, 114th, but like so many guys I talk about, 114th is fine, but he's not a must-draft guy because like where's the value come from? It's coming from steals. Like that's all it's coming from. 1.6 steals. Everything else was pretty much a negative. 1.8 threes, actually that's pretty good from PJ Tucker, but 7 points, 6 boards, 1 assist, 39.5% shooting, 69.5% shooting from the line. Like these are not great numbers. He provided excellent steals, 1.6. Unbelievable defensive player. Provides great value there. Struggles a bit on the offensive end, but can hit some threes. But interestingly enough, the team was 1.9 points per 100 possessions better off when he was sitting on the bench. For as good as he was, that's a little bit interesting. 34 years of age as well for PJ Tucker. He's not a guy that I'm going to be really interested in as a 12-team league player next season, just because, this is not offering me much. It's a steal stream. Maybe I take him in the last round just if my team absolutely needs those steals. But there's very little else that PJ Tucker's providing from a fantasy point of view. On court, absolutely excellent, no doubt about that. He provides good value, even though that on-off is a little bit curious. Eric Gordon, the next guy, 157th overall, a guy that I was pretty down on heading into the season, had an ADP of 100. I just didn't think he'd be able to maintain some of the level from the year before when Chris Paul missed so much time and James Harden, and that's when he boosted his numbers. When those guys play, and then the addition of Austin Rivers as well, it limits what Gordo can do. 16 points is strong, 32 minutes a night is good. There's just nothing else. 41% from the field, 78% from the line, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, half a steal. If he is in a situation where Paul or Harden are out, and he started nearly all of the season at small forward this year instead of Trevor Ariza the year before, he handles the ball more, he gets more assists, he gets to the free throw line more, he scores more, and that boosts him to be a top 60 player. When guys are healthy, he's not. He's not even really a standard league guy, and he didn't finish this season as a standard league player. Would I still draft him in the back ends around 12-13? Maybe, because if Paul goes down for 30 games, then Gordon's value will be useful there, but I'm not going to be anywhere near as high on him as what other people will be. Plus 1.09 PIPM is okay, struggles still defensively. The on-off was good, plus 5.3, but obviously we can see by those numbers, outside of points, he's not contributing in any other category. Kenneth Faried, only 37 games this year for Big Ken. 20 minutes a game, 10 points, 7 boards, half a steal, half a block, 59 and 65. It's just Kenneth Faried. This is what he is. He's a rebounder who can score and can get a high field goal percentage and do nothing else. That's really as simple as what it is for Faried. And nothing changed this season. He came in and provided some solid enough minutes, was exactly what they needed from him, a plus 1.5 overall on-off, exactly what the Rockets needed. But from a fantasy point of view, who's going to be trusting Kenneth Faried to play 28 minutes a night? The answer should be no one, and therefore he won't be a guy that should be anywhere near the consideration of standard leagues. He is going to be turning 30 halfway through next season, so he's not on the young side. There's no one that can argue that. People really love Faried a lot more than what I do as a player. I just think he's extremely limited. He can get cooked defensively. He offers very little offensively. He's got one skill and does that really well, and his hustle and motor are excellent. But at some point, that's going to go away. And when you hit 30, that day is getting very, very close. And I just don't see Faried being anything more than a very, very deep league guy as we move forward. As you move forward, though, you should be checking out today's sponsors. We're looking at Hotels.com. Don't hate like your friend's trip. Book your own with Hotels.com and get rewarded basically everywhere. And also Grip 6, ultra lightweight belts with no holes, no flap, a great Father's Day gift. Grip6.com/lock, LOCKE. The next player up to look at on this squad, and we're getting there's very few contributors left now. Daniel House started off the season well, had a 2-way contract. The Rockets wouldn't convert, wouldn't give him the deal he was after, so basically he just didn't play again until right at the very end of the season when they caved and gave him a contract. He's now a restricted free agent. And then they needed him 25 minutes a night, 9.5 points with 2 threes, 3.5 boards, 47 and 79, and shot 42% from 3. Now, House is not known as a shooter, shot 26% from 3 last season in Phoenix, so I think there's an element of flukiness there with him. And that created some really big games from Danny at times. He had that when he came back and signed that contract in March, 18 with 4 threes, 14 with 2 threes, 19 with 6 threes, on some really high shooting, and that was basically what he was doing before he got demoted and sent down to the G League in January. He was putting up these numbers, and a lot of it was unsustainable. He doesn't assist. Defensive stats are lacking. Not a high usage guy, and never will be a high usage guy. Can be a relatively useful wing player, and they should be looking to bring him back. I would feel pretty good that they will bring him back, but he's still never going to be a guy, I don't feel, that's going to be taking big steps forward in multiple categories. He's 26 years of age already, so he's not as young as his lack of experience may indicate. And I think that we saw some real fluky performances from House this season that I'm not sure are going to be replicable. Still had some struggles defensively. PIPM was about neutral. The plus 4.7 is a real positive on his report card, and I do think that he should be a rotation player on this team ahead of Gerald Green. Next season, he should be prioritised to at least bring back, but I don't really see much in terms of fantasy upside. Nor with Iman Shumpert, who came across from the Cavs after being traded, came across from the Kings. 24 minutes, 7.5 points, 3 rebounds, 37% shooting. He played much better than anticipated at the beginning of the season, was a useful enough threes and steals streamer. Got to Houston and completely looked like he forgot how to play. It was just completely out of it during his time in Houston. Negative 3.25 PIPM was a negative in wins added, a negative 9 on-off. Massive struggles from Shumpert after he arrived in Houston. 29 years of age very, very soon. I don't see any situation where he finds himself in a large role on a team next season. Austin Rivers, I thought was impressive this season. He is not a big fantasy contributor. He needs 36 minutes a night to really come close to cracking the top 100. He had 27 minutes a night this season and was 304th. 8 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, 41 and 53 from the line. That is disgusting shooting from the line from Austin Rivers. But I liked what he did. I thought he was able to play a solid enough role on the wing. The advanced stuff doesn't necessarily match up with that. But I thought that Austin Rivers was pretty good, but he's just not a fantasy asset, and he's never going to become a good one moving forward. Gerald Green, similarly, a great 3-point streamer. Hit again over 2 threes per year this year, 35% shooting, but doesn't do anything else. He's 33. Wouldn't be surprised if he's not on an NBA roster next season, but had his moments this year. And let's talk about the next guy, the Comet, Gary Clark, a rookie, undrafted rookie, who played really well at the beginning of the season. His ability to get some defensive stats was strong, but didn't miss a free throw a year, so that's fantastic. But the shooting was horrible. Under 30 from 3, 33% overall. 3 points with 2 boards. The value really came from the fact that he never turned it over at all. You know how I feel about turnovers. And he was able to get some defensive numbers, but he also fell out of favour as the season went on. The PIPM ended up in the negative for him. After a strong start, negative in the on-off as well. The defense, the shine definitely came off Gary Clark as the season went on after a really, really strong start. Is he an NBA rotation player? I'm not sure about that. Is he a guy is probably going to be on roster? Yes, I think that should be the case. Nene, just 13 minutes a night. Look, if they bring back Fareed, then he gets that backup center job, or else they should be really looking for Isaiah Hartenstein to take that role. Nene is going to be 37, 3.5 points, 3 rebounds, not a fantasy contributor under any stretch. They had 6 players on this team who finished outside the top 380 in fantasy. That just shows how top-heavy things were. The only guy that I really like at the back end here, there's Trayvon Duval, Chris Chiozza, Vince Edwards there, is Isaiah Hartenstein. 28 games, 8 minutes, 2 points, 2 boards, half a steal, or 0.3 steals, 0.4 blocks, 49 and 79 as his percentages, 33% from 3. I think that Hartenstein can be a rotation caliber player in the NBA, can be a backup center, and can be like a top 200 fantasy guy in 19 minutes. I think he can get to that level. He's got a long way to go, but 221 minutes this season, a negative 0.93 on-off was okay. A plus 3 points, so on and off, that was PIPM. A plus 3.6 on-off is staggeringly high. I thought he held his own at times out there. He can develop a little bit more. He's a pretty good rebounder who can get some defensive numbers, who can also go out there and shoot some threes, hit his free throws. There is something there in Hartenstein. He's the guy to watch on this squad, who it's going to be a while before a real opportunity comes in a big way, but I think if Nene and Fareed are both gone, they could have some faith in Hartenstein stepping up and taking over more of that backup big man role. They had Trayvon Duval on a two-way deal. He showed absolutely nothing for me to be interested in after he had some time in Milwaukee as well. And Vince Edwards, their second-round pick, only played 2 games, and I'm not convinced that he is a player moving forward. Actually, he's not even on there. I think they've already waived him. He's not a guy moving forward that I think has really too much of an NBA career. So this is a really short show, this season review, because there's not a huge amount to talk about with this Rockets team, given the amount of non-fantasy contributors and low upside guys and guys who may not even remain in the league as we move move forward. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on the Himalaya podcast app, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and on Spotify. And follow me on Twitter at redrock_bball. Check out our sponsors, hotels.com and Grip 6 Belts. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Daryl Morey.